Hey, I'm Jamey from Stonespine Architects, and today I'm going to talk about my favorite mechanism in the game Stonespine Architects, which is in the world of Ulos, which includes some of my favorite games like Cartographers, Role Player Adventures. Stonespine Architects is in that world, but not really connected while you're playing that world in terms of what you were actually thinking about while you're playing. Because what you're doing in this game is creating a dungeon. You have all these dungeon cards that you are drafting, and as you draft a card, you are also placing it into your dungeon, creating rows. It's 4 draft rounds. Each round, you're going to create a row of 4 cards. And one of the neat things is, as you move on to subsequent rounds, there's some important information for the current round down here at the bottom of the card. But as you move on to the next round and you start placing more cards, you cover that up so that you create this cohesive dungeon after you're done playing. I think that's a really clever card design. In fact, I want to mention one other thing that is, in my opinion, really clever card and component design. And it's related to these cards that come out every round. These create a market in the game, these cards right here. But there's nothing on them. You have to fill them with tokens. There's a nice little token container here. Tokens of 3 different shapes. Lots of different things on those tokens, but 3 different shapes. And you can see here, this card shows you exactly what types of shapes to put on the card. So you just fill these 2 slots with oval tokens and this slot with a square token. There's also a circle that you might see on some. Here's one. So I thought this was also really clever component design to convey very clearly exactly what goes on this card, where they go, and to have different batches of tokens to make sure there's a certain variety of tokens that are that will appear in the game, that you're not only seeing one specific type of token or one specific type of bonus. That actually ties to what I think is my favorite mechanism in the game, which is the money system. Although I want to talk about the 2-player draft as well, because it's really, really clever. So I mentioned each round you're creating a row of cards. The row of cards looks like this. That current row will have the money visible at the bottom of the card. And this money matters for the end of the round, because after you create that row, all players have drafted 4 cards, they've created that row. You count up how much money you have, and you keep track of it on this little chart here. You count how much money you have, you put it on that chart, and you also count all treasure chests that you've accumulated over the course of the entire game. So not just the current round, but the entire game. So it's money here plus treasure chests. And that shows you how much money that you have to spend on these tokens at the end of the round. And you can see here, even, I didn't even mention this, but they have different costs. So like this row of tokens, each of those tokens costs 9. This row of token, each of these tokens cost 4. So you count up your money, you track it on here, and then you take turns spending money, starting with a player with the most money. And one of the neat little twists here is you're taking turns spending the money, but also at the end of that the spending period, your money reverts to 0. So it doesn't carry over to the next round, which I thought was a clever little twist, that you can't really accumulate a ton of money and wait to spend it until the end of the game. The game is telling you, you need to spend this money now. There's a reason to spend this money now. And you can even decide, I don't want to spend any of the money, or I want to stop spending money, and you can pass. And when you do that, you get to claim a bonus card. There are different bonuses that you can gain that will help you score more points in the game. A lot of different bonus cards in the game that you can claim. So I really like that money market system and how it's tied to the money that you're playing on the cards. It creates something else to consider on these cards, because a lot of what you're doing as you're creating the dungeon is trying to complete a bunch of different goals. You're trying to connect paths. You're trying to, based on a global goal, you're trying to have different tokens like this. You're trying to accumulate points. Stars are points. Here's another icon that you're trying to collect depending on the goals for that game, global goals or the goals that you've claimed for that game. And the tokens that you're gaining are adding to these cards. So I might want more gelatinous cubes, and so I might find a token that has one of them on it, and I'll put it in one of the other open parts of this particular this card. So all that whole system works really well. Before I go, though, I want to mention the 2-player draft system, because I thought it was really, really clever, this 2-player draft system. I've seen a number of 2-player drafting games where the adjustment to the draft, instead of passing cards around the table, hands of cards, they just simply put things on the table. Seven Wonders Duel does this in an interesting way. Splendor Duel does it. And I think that format works. But this was a really interesting twist on that, which is at the beginning of each round, each player draws 5 cards. You have 5 cards in hand. Each player selects a card to play, also selects a card to discard, and then passes the cards to the other player, and the other player then draws a new card from the top of the deck. And so it is as if one card has been taken away from that hand because I started with 5 cards. The player who gets the hand only has 4 cards, and all players are doing this simultaneously, or both players are doing this simultaneously. So 5 cards are reduced to 4 cards, but as part of that process, I have removed a card from the hand to make room for a new random card. And this might feel a little bit like hate drafting, and it can be a little bit if you look over your opponent and see that they're going after a certain type of token. But in reality, I think the way it actually plays out is you're seeing more cards as a result because you are drawing a random card from the deck to add to that hand. So you might look at your hand of 5 cards and see one card that you want. You might take that card, but the other 4 cards aren't looking great for you, and you know you're going to get that hand back from the opponent in a minute. But because of this twist on the draft, you're removing one of those cards, you're adding a random card to the hand that might be better, and before you even get that hand back, the opponent is going to do the same thing. And so you are constantly kind of refreshing those cards and getting access to more cards that you might actually want to play. I thought that was a really interesting twist on a 2-player draft in Stonespine Architects. Those are my favorite mechanisms in the game. I'd love to hear your favorite twists on 2-player drafts and money economy systems in games, especially economy systems where your money is flushed at the end of the round. You have to spend it or you lose it. The pros and cons for that, let me know in the comments below. Thanks.